The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary as I stirred the pasta sauce, humming along to the soft jazz playing from the living room. Thursday nights were our tradition, homemade dinner, no phones at the table, just us. 7 years of marriage had taught me that these small rituals mattered more than grand gestures. My wife walked in, her work bag sliding off her shoulder onto the counter with a heavy thud. Something in her posture made me glance up. She stood there, fingers fidgeting with her bracelet, the silver one I'd given her on our first anniversary. Her eyes couldn't quite meet mine. "Hey," I said, lowering the heat on the stove. "Rough day." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "We need to talk." Those 4 words. I'd heard them in 1,000 movies, read them in countless books, but hearing them in my own kitchen, in my wife's trembling voice, made my stomach drop. I turned off the burner completely and leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "Okay. I'm listening." She took a deep breath, and when she finally looked at me, I saw something I'd never seen before in her gentle brown eyes, guilt mixed with defiance, like a child caught doing something wrong but not entirely sorry about it. "There's someone at work. Dylan. He's the new project manager who joined 3 months ago." She paused, watching for my reaction. "We've been talking a lot. About life, about dreams, about things that matter. He listens to me in a way that makes me feel seen, understood." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral. "Go on." "He asked me out to dinner tomorrow night. A real dinner, just the 2 of us." She swallowed hard. "I want to go. I feel like I need to explore this connection, to see what it means. You've been so busy with work lately, and I've been feeling invisible. Dylan makes me feel alive again." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to ask how she could even consider this. But another part, the part that had loved this woman for over a decade, remained eerily calm. I studied her face, this person I'd shared a bed with, built a life with, made plans and dreams with. "So you're telling me you want to date another man while we're married?" I said slowly, making sure I understood correctly. "It's not like that," she protested, stepping closer. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need to understand these feelings. Maybe it's just a friendship that feels intense because it's new. Maybe I need this to appreciate what we have. I'm being honest with you instead of sneaking around. That has to count for something." I nodded, my mind surprisingly clear despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside. "You're right. Honesty does count for something." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, relief flickering across her face. "So you understand?" "I understand perfectly," I said, pushing off from the counter. "Give me a moment." I walked past her, down the hallway to my office. My hands were steady as I unlocked the filing cabinet, pulled out the folder I'd hoped I'd never need, and returned to the kitchen. She was standing exactly where I'd left her, confusion replacing the relief. I placed the papers on the counter between us. "Perfect. Sign this." She stared at the documents, her face paling as she recognized the letterhead of our family attorney. What is this?" "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "I had them drawn up last week. Call it intuition, or maybe I've just been paying more attention than you thought." "You can't be serious." Her voice cracked. "I haven't even done anything yet. I'm just being honest about my feelings." "And I'm being honest about mine," I replied, meeting her shocked gaze. "You want to explore a connection with another man? Go ahead. But not as my wife." The jazz music still played softly in the background, absurdly cheerful against the weight of the moment. I watched her face cycle through emotions, shock, disbelief, anger, and finally something that looked like fear. "Ryan, please. Can't we talk about this? Maybe counseling?" I shook my head slowly. "You already made your choice when you decided his attention was worth more than our marriage. I'm just respecting that choice." She didn't sign the papers that night. Instead, she left them on the counter and retreated to the guest bedroom, probably expecting me to follow, to fight, to beg her to reconsider. I did none of those things. I covered the pasta sauce and put it in the refrigerator, turned off the music, and went to bed in our room. My room now, I supposed. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay there in the darkness, remembering the woman I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago. Maria had been working as a pediatric nurse, and I'd met her at my nephew's hospital appointment. She'd been so gentle with him, so patient, making him laugh even through his fear of needles. When she'd turned that warm smile on me, asking if I needed anything, I'd blurted out, "Your phone number." She'd laughed and written it on a prescription pad. The woman in the guest bedroom felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. Friday morning arrived with awkward silence. She emerged from the guest room with red-rimmed eyes, still in yesterday's clothes. I was already dressed for work, briefcase in hand, coffee made but untouched. "Have a good day," I said, and left before she could respond. Work was a blessing and a curse. My architecture firm was in the middle of 3 major projects, which meant I could lose myself in blueprints and client meetings. But every quiet moment, every lunch break, every time I glanced at my phone, I wondered if she was with him. If she'd gone on that date despite everything. My phone buzzed around noon. A text from her. "I cancelled the dinner. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "The papers are still on the counter." Over the weekend, she tried everything. She cooked my favorite meals, which I ate in polite silence. She tried to initiate conversations about our past, our good memories, our future. I listened without engaging. She cried, she apologized. She insisted she'd made a mistake even thinking about it. "I don't know what I was thinking," she said Sunday evening, following me to the bedroom. "Dylan doesn't mean anything. You're my husband. I love you." I turned to face her, and she must have seen something in my expression that made her step back. "Do you know what the saddest part is?" I asked quietly. "I believe you. I believe you love me. But you loved me Thursday morning too, and it wasn't enough to stop you from wanting something else." "People make mistakes," she whispered. I was confused, feeling neglected. "But I didn't actually do anything. Doesn't that count for something?" "You did do something," I corrected her. "You decided that whatever was missing in our marriage justified pursuing another man. You weighed our 7 years together against some guy's attention and found us lacking. Maybe you didn't physically cheat, but you'd already left in your heart." "That's not fair," she protested, tears streaming down her face. "You're not even trying to understand where I was coming from. Yes, I've been lonely. Yes, I felt like you were married to your work instead of me. But that doesn't make me a villain for having human emotions." "You're right," I acknowledged, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I've been working too much. I've taken you for granted. In a good marriage, you would have told me that directly. We would have gone to counseling, taken a vacation, figured it out together. But instead, you confided in another man and let those feelings grow until you were ready to act on them. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." She sank to the floor, shoulders shaking with sobs. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to pull her into my arms the way I had 1,000 times before. But I couldn't. Something fundamental had broken, and all her tears couldn't glue it back together. Monday came, and she still hadn't signed the papers. I found her in the kitchen before work, looking haggard and exhausted. "I talked to my sister," she said. "And my mom. They both think I'm an idiot and that you're overreacting. They said all couples go through rough patches, and throwing away a marriage over a what-if is crazy. What do you think?" I asked. She looked at me with desperate eyes. "I think I'm terrified. I think I made a horrible error in judgment. I think I'm watching my life fall apart, and I don't know how to stop it." "Then maybe," I said gently, "you should have thought about that before you asked your husband for permission to date someone else." I left her standing there, and as I drove to work, I felt something unexpected, relief. The decision was made. The path was clear. All that remained was following it to the end. 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. We lived in the same house but existed in different worlds. She'd finally signed the papers, not willingly, but after her lawyer explained that my grounds were solid and fighting would only make things messier and more expensive. In our state, emotional infidelity and intention to pursue an affair were legitimate reasons for divorce. especially when documented through text messages she'd foolishly not deleted. I learned this detail from my attorney, not from her. Apparently, her correspondence with Dylan had been extensive, daily messages about everything and nothing, complaints about our marriage, discussions about where they might go on that dinner date. She'd been building a relationship with him for months, not weeks. The dinner invitation had just been the culmination. "You went through my phone," she confronted me, fury momentarily overriding her regret. "Your phone syncs to the tablet you gave me for Christmas," I'd replied calmly. The notifications were hard to miss. The fury had dissolved into shame. She'd moved out 2 weeks after signing the papers, taking half the furniture and all of her personal belongings. The house felt cavernous and quiet without her. I'd catch myself setting 2 places at the table or brewing too much coffee, muscle memory betraying my new reality. My best friend, James, came over one evening with pizza and beer. He'd known both of us since college, had been my best man at the wedding. He sat on my couch, now positioned differently in a room that Maria had once arranged, and studied me with concern. "You doing okay, man? And don't give me the I'm fine routine." I took a long pull from the beer bottle. "Honestly, I don't know. Some days I wake up angry. Some days I just feel empty. But I don't regret the divorce. No second thoughts? No wondering if you moved too fast? Would you trust someone again after that?" I countered. Even if she hadn't physically cheated, she was ready to. She'd already emotionally checked out. "How do you come back from that?" James nodded slowly. "My sister went through something similar. Her husband had an emotional affair with a coworker. They tried counseling, reconciliation, the whole thing. She said the worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was the loss of peace. She could never fully trust him again. Every late night at work, every text message, every female name mentioned became a potential threat. She said it was like living with constant anxiety." "Exactly," I said, grateful he understood. "I can't live like that. I won't." Through mutual friends, I heard updates about Maria. She'd moved into a small apartment across town. She'd apparently ended things with Dylan immediately after I'd presented the papers. According to her version, she'd realized it was just infatuation the moment real consequences appeared. She'd thrown herself into work, taking extra shifts at the hospital, avoiding social gatherings where she might run into me. "She's a mess," James's wife, Lisa, told me when she stopped by to drop off a casserole. "I saw her at the grocery store last week. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Started crying when she saw me." "What did she say?" "That she ruined the best thing in her life over nothing. That Dylan turned out to be just a guy who liked the attention of a married woman and lost interest the second she was available. That she understands now what she had and threw away." Lisa paused. "She asked about you. What did you tell her?" "That you're doing well. Moving forward." Lisa studied me carefully. "Are you? Really?" I thought about it honestly. I'm healing. Slowly. Some days are harder than others, but I'm not drowning anymore. I'm just swimming toward shore. The divorce was finalized on a grey October morning, 4 months after that terrible Thursday night. We didn't see each other in court. Our attorneys handled everything. I signed the final papers in my lawyer's office, and just like that, 7 years of marriage dissolved into a legal document. That evening, I drove to the coast, something I'd always wanted to do, but Maria had never enjoyed the beach. I sat on the sand as the sun set, watching the waves roll in and out with their eternal patience. I thought about fresh starts and second chances, about the difference between forgiving and forgetting, about how sometimes love isn't enough. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know I have no right to reach out, but I needed you to know, I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved so much better. I hope you find it." I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations are already over before they begin. 6 months post-divorce, I was surprised to find myself, okay. Not happy, not yet, but stable. Functional. I'd thrown myself into my work, finally completing the community center design I'd been dreaming about for years. I'd started going to the gym, not to impress anyone but because the routine felt good. I'd reconnected with old friends, taken up cooking seriously, and adopted a dog from the shelter, a 3-year-old golden retriever named Sam who seemed to understand that we were both starting over. You know what's weird? I told James over drinks one Friday evening. I thought I'd be angrier, more bitter, but mostly I just feel relieved. Like I was carrying something heavy and didn't realize until I put it down. That's healthy, man, James said, signaling for another round. You processed it, made your decision, and moved on. That's what you're supposed to do. Through the invisible network of mutual friends and acquaintances, I continued to hear about Maria. She'd apparently gone through her own transformation. After the initial devastation, she'd started therapy. She'd taken a step back at work, recognizing that she'd been using her role as everyone's confidant and caregiver as a way to avoid dealing with her own issues. She'd joined a support group for people rebuilding after divorce. She'd even started volunteering at a different capacity at the hospital, working with patients in a way that fed her soul rather than depleting it. She's really working on herself, Lisa mentioned during a barbecue at their house. I ran into her at yoga class. She seems different, more self-aware. I nodded, focusing on flipping the burgers. That's good. I'm glad she's doing well. Do you think you'll ever talk to her again? Even just as friends? Honestly, I don't see the point. We're different people now, moving in different directions. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone go completely. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and longer days. I was at a coffee shop, working on some preliminary sketches for a new project, when I saw her. Maria stood in line, looking thinner than I remembered, her hair shorter and styled differently. She wore a sundress I'd never seen before and carried herself with a quietness that was new, not the gentle empathy she'd always projected, but something more contained, more internally focused. She hadn't seen me yet. I had time to leave, to avoid the awkwardness of this encounter. But something made me stay. Curiosity, maybe. Or closure. She got her coffee and turned, and our eyes met. I watched the emotions flicker across her face, surprise, fear, regret, hope. She hesitated, then walked over slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. Hi, she said softly, standing a respectful distance from my table. Hi. Can I? She gestured to the empty chair across from me. I nodded, and she sat down carefully, wrapping both hands around her coffee cup as if needing something to hold on to. You look good, she said. Healthy. Thanks. So do you. Silence stretched between us, not entirely uncomfortable but weighted with everything unsaid. She seemed to gather her courage. I've been wanting to reach out, but I didn't think I should. I didn't think I had the right, she began. But since we're here, I owe you a real apology. Not the panicked, desperate one from before, but a genuine one. Okay, I said neutrally, setting down my pencil. I was wrong. Not just about Dylan, but about everything. I was using him as a symptom when the real problem was me. I was scared of becoming invisible, of being just the wife or the nurse instead of a whole person. But instead of doing the hard work of figuring out who I wanted to be, I looked for external validation. I turned what should have been our problem to solve together into my secret exit strategy. She paused, her eyes glistening but no tears falling. You were right to leave. I didn't understand that then, but I do now. You weren't being cruel or unforgiving. You were protecting yourself from someone who'd already emotionally abandoned the marriage. I'm sorry for putting you through that. You deserved honesty and partnership, and I gave you neither. I listened to her words, measuring them against the months of healing I'd done. I appreciate you saying that. Genuinely. I don't expect anything from you, she continued quickly. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship or anything at all. I just needed you to know that I understand now. And that I'm grateful, in a strange way, for how you handled it. You could have dragged it out, tried to punish me, made it ugly. But you were clear and direct, and it forced me to face myself. We talked for another 20 minutes, the conversation surprisingly easy once the heavy apology was out of the way. She told me about her therapy journey, how she discovered patterns from her childhood, being the peacemaker, the caretaker, always managing everyone else's emotions while neglecting her own. She talked about learning to sit with discomfort instead of seeking external validation to soothe it. I shared updates about my work, the community center project that was finally breaking ground, Sam's antics, and how he'd become my best companion. We carefully avoided the deeper emotional territory, keeping things surface level and cordial. As our cups emptied, she glanced at her watch. I should go. I have a session with my therapist in an hour. She stood, then hesitated. Maybe we could do this again sometime? Coffee, I mean. As friends. Eventually. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the genuine growth, the real remorse, the work she'd clearly put into becoming a better version of herself. I also saw the hope in her eyes, carefully guarded but present. And I understood something she hadn't quite said. This wasn't just about friendship. Can I be honest with you? I asked. Please, she said, sitting back down. You've clearly done a lot of work on yourself, and that's genuinely impressive. The person standing in front of me now is probably someone who could have handled that Thursday night differently. Who would have come to me first, suggested counseling, been brave enough to address our problems as a team. Her expression brightened slightly, and I hated what I had to say next. But I'm not the same person either. The man who was married to you, he died that night in the kitchen. He had to, for me to survive what came after. I spoke gently but firmly. I've built a new life. I've learned to be happy alone. I've rediscovered who I am outside of being someone's husband. And honestly, I like this version of me. I understand, she whispered, but her eyes told me she'd been hoping for something different. I don't hold anger toward you anymore, I continued. I don't wish you anything but the best. But moving forward, even as friends, would mean looking backward. And I'm done looking backward. She nodded slowly, tears finally spilling over. You're saying no. To all of it. I'm saying that sometimes the best thing two people can do for each other is wish each other well and walk away. We had something beautiful once. It ended badly. But we both grew from it. That's enough. Is there someone else? She asked, voice breaking slightly. Is that why? No, I interrupted gently. There's no one else. There might be someday, or there might not. But that's not what this is about. This is about me choosing not to revisit a chapter of my life that's already closed. She stood again, this time with finality. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and I saw her straighten her spine, accepting what I was saying. Thank you for your honesty. Again. You've always been honest with me, even when I didn't deserve it. For what it's worth, I said, standing as well, I really do hope you find what you're looking for. You're a good person who made some bad choices. That doesn't define you forever. Neither does being left define you, she replied with a sad smile. You're proof of that. We stood there for a moment in the coffee shop, two people who'd once promised forever to each other, now preparing to say goodbye. There was no hug, no dramatic final gesture, just a nod of mutual understanding. Take care of yourself, Ryan, she said. You too, Maria. She walked out of the coffee shop, and I watched her go, really let her go this time, not just legally but emotionally. I sat back down, picked up my pencil, and returned to my sketches. Sam would be waiting at home, probably wondering when I'd take him to the park. James had texted about a new restaurant opening next week. My mom had called yesterday about Sunday dinner. Life, I realized, was full even without romantic love. That evening, I took Sam for a long walk along the river trail. The setting sun painted the water gold and orange, and I thought about second chances. Not all of them looked like reconciliation. Sometimes a second chance meant the opportunity to choose differently, to honor yourself, to recognize that closure doesn't always come with a bow on top. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maria's new one, I assumed. Thank you for today. For everything. I'll always be grateful for the years we had and the lessons learned. Wishing you all the happiness you deserve. I typed out a response. Likewise. Be well. Then I did something I hadn't been able to do before. I saved her number under Maria, past, and set the conversation to archived. Not deleted, our history deserved acknowledgement. But not actively present in my daily life either. As Sam pulled me forward on the trail, eager to explore the next bend, the next smell, the next adventure, I found myself smiling. Life had thrown me a curveball that shattered my plans. I'd had every right to become bitter, closed off, afraid of trust and love. Instead, I'd chosen to heal, to grow, to remain open to whatever came next. The future was unwritten. Maybe someday I'd fall in love again. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd build a life of professional achievement, deep friendships, and personal fulfillment that didn't center on romance. All of it was possible. All of it was okay. The only thing I knew for certain was that I wouldn't go backward. Not for nostalgia, not for comfort, not even for a version of someone I'd once loved who'd finally become who she needed to be. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something good because you know it's not right. As twilight descended and the streetlights began to flicker on, I headed home with Sam trotting beside me, both of us content in the simple rhythm of putting one foot in front of the other, moving forward into whatever tomorrow might bring. The chapter was closed. The book was finished. And somewhere in my future, a new story was waiting to be written, one where I was the author, not a supporting character in someone else's narrative of self-discovery. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.